My name is Eleanor Vance.
I had
I'm
such high
62
hopes
years
for you,
old.
Daniel.
This morning was supposed to be the beginning of peace, my first day of retirement after 38 years of teaching. I brewed myself a cup of Earl Grey, sat by the window, and thought. This is what freedom must feel like. The sun spilled through the sheer curtains, painting golden ripples on my teacup. For the first time in decades, I didn't have to rush anywhere. No bell. No children shouting Mrs. Vance down the hallway. Just quiet. I smiled, thinking I had finally earned my rest. And then, it happened. A wet dish rag came flying across the living room and landed right in my lap, splattering grease across my favorite beige cardigan. "Mom," my daughter-in-law Jessica snapped, her hands on her hips. "From now on, cooking, cleaning, laundry, that's all yours. You're retired now. You can't just live here for free." Her words cut through me like cold air. She stood there, proud, with her hair tied in a tight ponytail, eyes sharp like glass. Before I could even respond, my son Daniel stepped out of the bedroom, clean suit, perfect tie, that same boyish smile that used to melt my heart. "Jess, don't talk to Mom like that." For a moment, I felt relief. He remembered who I was. But then he added softly, "Mom's getting older. We're all under pressure. It's only fair that she helps out around the house, don't you think?" Fair. That word hung in the air like smoke. I had stayed up 3 nights when he had pneumonia as a child. I'd worked extra hours to pay for his college. I gave him every penny I'd saved for his wedding, the down payment for this very house. And now, my son was asking me to earn my stay. "I understand," I said quietly. I set my teacup down, wiped the grease from my lap, and forced a smile. "You two go to work. I'll take care of things here." Jessica hummed victoriously and started out the door. Daniel gave me a faint smile, half affection, half impatience, before following her. When the door clicked shut, the silence was deafening. I looked around the living room, the house I had helped buy. The house that was no longer mine. On the wall still hung a family photo from years ago. Daniel as a little boy, his arms around my neck, grinning from ear to ear. I went into the kitchen. Dirty dishes stacked high in the sink, grease splattered across the stove, trash overflowing. I rolled up my sleeves and started washing. The warm water ran over my trembling hands. One plate after another. The sound of clinking porcelain filled the room. And somewhere between one dish and the next, my tears began to fall. Before I retired, I used to help around the house every day after work. Jessica would criticize the food I cooked, too salty, too bland. She'd wipe the floor after me, complaining I didn't clean well enough. But at least, back then, I still had my dignity as a working woman. Now, on my first morning of retirement, I was nothing but an unpaid maid. After the dishes were done, I didn't mop the floor. Instead, I went to my small room at the back of the house, the one they called Mom's room. I knelt down and pulled out an old suitcase from under the bed, the one Arthur, my late husband, and I had bought years ago for a trip to Florida. Arthur has been gone for 5 years now. I still remember his last words. "Eleanor, people change. Promise me you'll always have something of your own." At the time, I thought he was just being sentimental. But now, I understood. I began to pack. Clothes. Photo albums. A few books. The old watch Arthur left me. And finally, the envelope of pension money I had quietly saved for months, not much, but enough to start somewhere new. I left a note on the dining table. "I'm going to find my own worth. Don't worry about me." Then I wheeled my suitcase out of the house. At the gate, I flagged down a cab. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked cheerfully. I froze. "Where to?" "After Arthur died. I sold our old home and moved in with Daniel. Now, I had nowhere to go." "Downtown," I said finally. Just take me downtown. Through the car window, the city rolled by, the school where I'd taught for 20 years, the farmer's market Arthur loved, the little cafe where we used to sit on Sundays. Every street carried a memory. And every memory felt like it belonged to someone else now. I checked into a small hotel. The room was plain but spotless, a bed, a desk, and a window overlooking the busy street below. I sat there for a long time, just listening to the hum of the city. Then, I opened the hidden compartment in my suitcase. Inside was a large manila envelope filled with documents, property deeds, bank statements, investment papers. Before Arthur passed, he had insisted on setting them up for me. "Don't put all your eggs in one basket, Eleanor," he'd said. "Daniel's a good son, but life can change people." Inside that envelope was proof that I wasn't helpless. I owned a small condo in Southgate, rented out. A tiny commercial space on the outskirts of town. And a few mutual funds that paid a steady income. I smiled through my tears. Arthur had prepared for the day I never thought would come. I picked up my phone and dialed an old number. "Brenda? Eleanor? My God, it's been years." "I've moved out," I said simply. Silence. Then Brenda's voice hardened. "What happened?" I told her everything, the rag, the words, the humiliation. Brenda cursed under her breath. "Those ungrateful kids." "Don't worry, Ellie. I'll help you sort things out. The lease on your Southgate condo ends next week. Move there. I'll handle the paperwork." "Thank you," I whispered. "But don't tell Daniel. Let him sweat a little." She laughed softly. Now that's the Eleanor I remember. That night, I treated myself to a steak dinner at the hotel restaurant. Just as I was savoring the first bite, my phone rang again. "Daniel." "Mom, where are you?" "The house is clean, the dishes are done. Are you trying to teach us a lesson?" "I'm staying somewhere else for a few days," I said calmly. "Mom, stop being dramatic," he snapped. "Jessica's angry. Come back, okay? You don't have to do all the chores." "Daniel," I said, setting down my fork. "I raised you. I paid for your education. I gave you my life savings for that house. I am not your maid." Silence. Then a sigh of annoyance. "Fine. If that's what you want, enjoy your little vacation." He hung up. I took another bite of steak. For the first time in a long time, I ate slowly, not standing by a sink. Not waiting for anyone else to finish. The meat was tender. The wine warm. Freedom had a taste. That night, I slept deeply. No footsteps. No shouting. No guilt. Just quiet. When I woke the next morning, the sunlight spilled gently across the white sheets. For the first time in years, I felt rested and ready. I picked up my phone. There were 7 missed calls from Daniel, 3 messages. "Mom, please stop this. Jessica's mad. You're making things hard for us." I didn't reply. Instead, I called Brenda. "Morning, Ellie. Did you sleep well?" "Better than I have in years," I said, smiling. "Good. Then pack your things. It's time to move into your own home." I looked around the hotel room, the small, temporary space that had given me my first taste of peace, and whispered to myself. Yes. It's time. I used to think starting over was a young woman's phrase. But there I was at 62, riding an elevator to the 5th floor, clutching a key that said 502. Brenda walked in front of me like she had done this 100 times for other people. For me, it was the first. The door swung open to sunlight. Honest, unapologetic sunlight. It poured through the sliders, across the pale wood floor, and came to rest at my feet like a loyal dog. SFX. Door latch clicks, room breathes. "Welcome home, Ellie," Brenda said. "Home. Not my room. Not Daniel's house. Home. I put my suitcase by the couch and stood very still. I didn't want to say anything foolish and break whatever spell I was under. They left the furniture, Brenda went on. Good tenants. And they sent a cleaning service this morning. You could sleep here tonight if you like. I whispered. We walked from room to room, the compact kitchen. The modest master bedroom with a clean duvet folded like hotel corners, the second bedroom set up as an office, a little desk by the window. The balcony looked out over a square of lawn and a maple tree that had decided to go red early. You'll need utilities in your name, Brenda said, setting a thin folder on the table. I've started the forms. Her fingers tapped the folder once, then slid a thicker one beside it. This, she said. Voice professional now, is your rental income history for the condo. And this, she tapped the thick folder, is what we need to talk about next. I pulled out the top sheet. Neat columns. Dates. Deposits. $1,500 net each month after taxes and fees. 3 years. 4. 5. All on time. I never touched any of it, I murmured. I didn't know if I'd ever need it. You needed it now, Brenda said simply. And you have it. Ellie, there's also a trust. A word I had only heard in movies. Trust. She opened the thicker folder and turned it toward me. The paper smelled like ink and caution. Arthur set up a trust before he passed, she said. Primary beneficiary, you. Contingent beneficiary, Daniel, with conditions tied to filial responsibility. There's a monthly distribution of $2,000. She paused. For the last 5 years, it hasn't gone to you. The room went quiet enough to hear my own breath. Where has it gone? I asked. Brenda took a breath. To a holding account. It was supposed to shift automatically to your name. The person who had power of attorney right after Arthur died, never filed the transfer. Arthur's funeral. Daniel insisting Mom, let me handle the paperwork. You're grieving. I'll take care of you. My pen, shaking, signing where the boy pointed. I swallowed. Who has the account? We're confirming this afternoon with Attorney Peterson. I wanted you to hear it from me first. I stared at the paper until the numbers blurred, then shut the folder. All right, I said. First things first, I'm moving in. We made a grocery run like 2 college girls playing house, bags. Bread, a little olive oil, coffee, a single basil plant that Brenda insisted belonged on my windowsill because every new kitchen deserves something green. I signed the utility forms with a steadier hand than the day I signed away my authority to my son. In the afternoon, we drove to a modest law office. Peterson had gold-rimmed glasses and the kind of calm I used to use on 6th graders. Mrs. Vance, he said, shaking my hand. I've reviewed the trust. Very clean. Your late husband was careful. He placed a single sheet in front of me. One line was highlighted. Receiving account ending in 42 to 78. Name, Daniel Vance. There are sounds your body makes that other people can't hear, a tendon tightening, a small bone protesting, your heart slipping on a wet stone. No, I said softly. No, he wouldn't. Peterson's voice stayed gentle. He had a valid power of attorney for a limited time after your husband passed. It should have been revoked once the estate settled. The bank should have confirmed the transfer to you. Neither happened. I'm sorry. So for 5 years, I looked up. Every month. A recurrent withdrawal. $1,800 after fees. Not even the full amount, I said, something dry and bitter breaking loose in my chest. He left the bank their little slice of courtesy. Peterson slid over a pen. We can send a demand letter today. If there's no immediate correction and restitution plan, we file. Brenda touched my elbow. I realized I had been holding the pen with white knuckles. Send it, I said. Send it now. That evening, back at the condo, I unpacked 3 plates, 2 bowls, and 1 stubborn knot of anger. I stood on the balcony and watched the maple tree breathe in the wind. I had always thought anger felt hot. This was cold. Clean. Like a winter morning you finally step into, knowing the house behind you will never be warm again. My phone vibra. Mom? Daniel's voice cracked on the second letter. Where are you? So many people are asking me that lately, I said. I went to your room. It's empty. Jessica's upset. This is childish, Mom. Come home. We can set rules. You won't have to do everything. I'm not coming back to be managed with rules, I said quietly. I'm not coming back at all. Silence. Then, sharply. Did Brenda put you up to this? I smiled into the dark. Brenda reminded me I have a key. That's all. A key? I let the quiet grow. Mom, he said, switching tactics, come on. You know money's tight. The mortgage, Jessica's. You've had an extra $1,800 a month for 5 years, I said, my voice suddenly steady. Tell me which mortgage that paid. Another silence. Then a scoff I had never heard from him as a child. Fine, he said. Be dramatic. Just don't forget who took care of all Dad's paperwork when you couldn't. The line went dead. I leaned my forehead against the cool glass. In the reflection, I looked like my mother, the same stubborn mouth, the same eyes that always held a second opinion. You warned me, Arthur, I whispered to the sliding door. You did. Inside, my new refrigerator hummed to itself, content. I made a cup of tea and drank it standing up, just to prove I didn't need the old rituals to feel strong. The demand letter went out the next morning. Peterson CC'd me. Brenda texted, delivered. Expect noise. Noise arrived by noon. 12 missed calls. 4 texts. One from a colleague of Daniel's, he didn't come in. Said there's a family emergency. I kept my phone face down and wiped the counter with slow, deliberate circles. There's a holiness in doing ordinary things when your life no longer is. By late afternoon, the call that mattered came from the bank manager. We drove over. I wore the navy blouse I used on parent-teacher night when I needed men in suits to treat me like a person. The manager pulled up a screen. Rows of same-day withdrawals. Same amount. Same signature. We'll need a court order to freeze, he said. But the trail is clear. I'm sorry. Me too, I said, and meant it. On the way out, Brenda murmured, you don't owe them your softness, Ellie. I owe myself the truth, I said. Softness is optional. We gave Daniel 1 week in writing. On day 2, he texted, it's invested. I can't pull it out. On day 3, it's for our future. Don't ruin this. On day 4, a photo of a sonogram, black and gray. A tiny crescent of pretend. Jessica's pregnant. Come home, Mom. I stared at the picture for a long time, then forwarded it to Brenda. 2 hours later, she called. Clinic records say irregular cycle, not pregnancy, Brenda said flatly. I'm sorry. I wasn't surprised. I still sat down. There are things a lie steals that the money never could. Your child's face. Your own reflection. The small, ordinary pride in having done your best. I went to the balcony and watered the basil. The plant leaned into the water without judgment. We'll do this the right way, I told it. Slow. Clean. 3 days later, I asked Daniel to meet me somewhere public, the entrance of my building. I sent the address. I told him to come alone. I don't know why I still believed in the power of an honest conversation in the daylight. Old teacher habits die slow. He arrived early, wearing the blue shirt I bought him last Christmas. The color made him look 19 again for one disorienting second. "This place?" he said, glancing up at the building. "Rent must be insane." "I wouldn't know," I said. "I own it." His eyes darted. "Quick. Calculating. Since when do you?" "Since 5 years ago," I said. "With your father's insurance. Right after you helped me with the trust papers." Color drained from his face. The wind tugged at his shirt. And for a moment we were back in a schoolyard, a boy who didn't know how to explain the broken window he hadn't meant to break. "Mom, I can explain." "Try." Jessica's cousin had a fund, a great opportunity. 20% returns. "We were going to buy a bigger house, help you in your old age." "In my old age," I repeated, the words tasting like iron. "With my money." "It was for us," he said helplessly. "We're family." Family doesn't hide the deposit slip. I took a breath that hurt a little going in. "You have 1 week. Return every cent. Or I file." "Hi. You'd put your own son in prison?" "You put your mother in debt," I said. "To her future." He took a step toward me, lowered his voice. "Without me, you'll die alone." I looked into the eyes I once wiped sleep out of with my fingers. I didn't cry. "Alone," I said, "is safer than lied to." I turned and walked inside. The security guard watched me with the kind of concern people have when they don't know the story but can smell the ending. "He's not allowed up," I told him gently. "Not for a while." That night, Attorney Peterson called with a new piece of the puzzle. "Mrs. Vance, there's a clause we hadn't discussed. If Daniel is negligent or unfilial, you can revoke his beneficiary status. Also—" He hesitated. "The paperwork shows an alteration 5 years ago. Someone adjusted the percentage in his favor and forged an authorization. We're getting the forensic team to confirm." I sat back in the chair that came with the condo. It creaked in sympathy. "File everything," I said. "All of it." After we hung up, I opened the drawer beside the couch and took out Arthur's old watch. The leather was cracked where his wrist had learned it. I pressed the face to my cheek for one soft, ridiculous second. "You should have told me more," I whispered. "But you told me enough." Peterson moved faster than my fear. Within days, Daniel received formal notice. Within a week, we were sitting in a small, beige room for court-ordered mediation, me with Brenda and Peterson, Daniel with no one. Jessica claimed a doctor's appointment. The mediator was a woman with gentle eyes and a stern mouth. She had seen families implode on the hour. "We're here to find resolution," she said. "Not punishment." I slid the ledger forward. Peterson slid the signatures forward. Brenda sat very still, the way people sit when they're ready to pounce if ready fails. Daniel rifled through the papers, lips moving like he could chew numbers into something edible. "This is a misunderstanding," he tried. "Then understand it," I said softly. Out loud. He swallowed. His foot tapped. For a moment, he almost looked like the little boy who used to confess everything with his whole body and then fall asleep on my shoulder 5 minutes later. I made some withdrawals," he said. "We had plans." "Your plan cost me 60 months of security," I said. "You will repay it." "With interest." "We can't," he burst. "It's gone." "Then the house goes," Brenda said. Her voice winter clean. He blanched. "That's our collateral," the mediator finished, writing briskly. "Repayment schedule. Lien on the property. Default triggers sale." Daniel looked at me like I had turned to stone in front of him. "Mom," he whispered, "please." My hands trembled in my lap where he couldn't see them. My voice did not. "Sign," I said. "And stop calling me Mom to get your way." He signed. When we stepped into the hallway, Brenda finally exhaled. "You did it," she said. "I didn't win," I replied. "I just stopped losing." That week, the condo learned the shape of me. I hung a wind chime on the balcony. I put Arthur's copy of Robert Frost by the bed and a glass of water on top because old habits make good paperweights. I cooked a bowl of soup for one and ate it at the table without apologizing to anyone for the salt. I started sleeping with my phone off. Peace likes being asked to stay. The first morning I forgot to be sad, the doorbell rang. The building manager stood there with a bouquet of lilies and carnations, my old favorites. "Just delivered for you, Ms. Vance," he said. The card read, "We're sorry. Please come home. Daniel and Jessica." Jessica's name was written in Daniel's handwriting. I set the flowers on the counter without finding a vase. By noon, another message arrived, this one from an unknown woman with a clipped, expensive voice. "Mrs. Vance? This is Veronica Thorne, Daniel's mother. We need to talk." Mother. The word echoed in a way that didn't make sense yet. I stared at the phone until the screen went dark. Then I texted Brenda, new character just entered the stage. Brenda responded with a single line, "Don't meet her alone." I didn't answer. I was looking at the way the light fell across my table, turning the wood to honey. I had learned, recently, how to listen to the room I was in. I turned the phone face down, poured myself a glass of water, and let the lilies stay unopened. You can choose PE. That night I slept with the balcony door cracked open, and the wind brought me the faraway sound of someone else's laughter. It didn't hurt. When you've lived long enough, you start to recognize the sound of trouble, even before it knocks. Sometimes, it's silence. Sometimes, it's a voice you thought you'd never have to hear. That morning, the phone call came. Her tone was cool. Polished. The kind of voice that came from a woman who had learned to win by sounding unbothered. "Mrs. Vance? This is Veronica Thorne." A pause. "I'm Daniel's mother." My fingers froze on the cup of tea I was holding. "I beg your pardon?" "Daniel's real mother," she said. "I think we should talk. Woman to woman." I didn't answer right away. I could hear my heart, a soft, uncertain echo under my ribs. "What is it you want, Mrs. Thorne?" I asked. "To clear the air," she said smoothly. "And to offer you a deal, one that will save both our families from scandal." She named a place, the cafe at the Grand Hotel, and hung up before I could refuse. Brenda didn't like it. "She's baiting you, Ellie," she said that afternoon, pacing across my living room. "She's manipulative, dangerous, and probably desperate." "I know," I said. "But I need to see the face that taught my son how to lie." Brenda stared at me for a long moment, then nodded reluctantly. "If you're going, I'll wait outside." "She won't corner you." Veronica was already seated when I arrived, a woman in her late 50s, elegant, with hair too perfect to be accidental. Her jewelry was quiet but expensive. When she smiled, her teeth were small and white, like polished stones. "Mrs. Vance," she greeted me. Or should I say, Eleanor? "Mrs. Vance is fine," I replied. "Suit yourself." She stirred her coffee with precision, as though controlling Ev. "Daniel spoke of you often," she began. "You've been quite the influence." "I raised him," I said. "That tends to happen." Her smile sharpened. "Yes. You raised him. But you didn't create him." I leaned back. "And what does that mean?" She slid an envelope across the table. Inside was a faded photo, a younger version of her, holding a baby. Arthur stood beside her. The handwriting on the back said, "Ming's first birthday, May 1986. "That's your husband, isn't it?" she said sweetly. "He looks happy." My throat went dry. "Arthur and I met in 1987, I whispered. Oh. I know, she said. This was before you. Back when he was married to me. I stared at her, the pieces clicking into place, Daniel's birth year, the unease Arthur never explained, the way his eyes sometimes went somewhere I couldn't follow. So Daniel was adopted, she interrupted smoothly. From a friend of mine who couldn't keep him. Arthur insisted on it. I let him. And when our marriage ended, he kept the boy. She leaned forward. You never wondered why he didn't look like you. He was my son, I said quietly. That's all that ever mattered. Her lips curved. Touching. But now, you understand why he's mine. Why are you telling me this? I asked. She took another sip of coffee, eyes glinting. Because I want what's mine, too. The trust fund. The money Arthur left. If you fight me, I'll show the world the rest. She slid another paper toward me, a loan record from 1986. Arthur's signature was there, approving a large, unauthorized loan. The borrower's name, Veronica Thorne. He helped me once, she said, voice syrupy. Broke a few rules. If this goes public, it'll stain his legacy. And yours. I looked down at the document, the date, the seal, the pen stroke that used to sign birthday cards and permission slips. Arthur isn't here to defend himself, I said. That's the point, she said, smiling. Dead men make the best scapegoats. She rose, smoothing her blazer. Here's my offer, you drop your claim to the trust. I'll keep this quiet. And we both go on living comfortably. You think you can buy my silence? I said. No, she said, stepping close enough for me to smell her perfume, expensive, suffocating. I think you'll trade it. To protect the name of a man you still love. She left me standing there, staring at the papers, the ghosts of my husband's past swirling like dust in sunlight. Outside, Brenda was waiting by the car. Well? She knows everything, I whispered. And she's using Arthur's mistakes to scare me. Brenda started the engine. Then we dig. If she's waving that paper around, there's more she's hiding. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at the photograph of Arthur with the baby. The edges had yellowed. But his expression was unmistakable, that same calm determination he wore when facing a classroom full of restless children, or me, when I doubted us. You promised me honesty, I said softly to the photo. But you never promised the truth would be easy. The next morning, my phone rang again. Daniel. Mom, he said breathlessly. I need to see you. It's urgent. Come by at noon, I said. He arrived early. Looking thinner, eyes rimmed red. He carried a folder, just like his father used to. You met her, didn't you? He said without preamble. Veronica. She told me everything. About Dad. About you. What exactly did she tell you, Daniel? He slammed the folder onto my table. Inside was a birth certificate. Name, Claire Vance. Mother, Eleanor Vance. Father, Arthur Vance. Date of birth, 1980. She said you had another child, he hissed. A daughter you gave away. And Dad left everything for her, not me. I stared at the paper. My name, perfectly forged. Arthur's, too. That's a lie. Is it? He snapped. You hid a whole child, and you're calling me the liar? Daniel, I said slowly. I have never had a daughter. He laughed, the kind of laugh that sounds like a wound tearing open. Of course you'd say that. You lied to me my whole life. Everything I did was to give you one, I said. He shook his head. You just wanted a puppet. And Dad never loved me. He only kept me because he pitied me. Your father loved you, I said fiercely. He loved you like you were his own. Then why did he write this? He yelled, waving the certificate. Why did he hide another family? Because this isn't real. He backed away, eyes wide and gleaming with hate. You'll regret this, Mom. You and your precious reputation. And just like that, he was gone. I sank into the chair, shaking. The air felt heavier. I picked up the phone and called Brenda. He has a forged birth record, I said. A daughter named Claire. Claire? Brenda repeated. That name again. It's been popping up in old bank records too. We'll find her. And if she's real? I whispered. Then we'll find out what Arthur never told you, Brenda said gently. And we'll decide what to do with it. That night, I couldn't sleep. The city outside hummed, oblivious. I thought of all the things I'd taught other people's children, kindness, honesty, empathy, and wondered how I'd raised my own son to weaponize lies. Arthur, I whispered into the dark. If you're somewhere, please, let the truth be kind. Sometimes, the past doesn't knock, it slips its key into your door while you're sleeping. And by the time you wake up, it's sitting at your kitchen table, asking for coffee. When I first read the name Claire Vance on that forged certificate, I thought it was just another lie. But lies, when repeated often enough, start growing faces of their own. A week later, a message arrived from an unknown number. Mrs. Vance, my name is Claire. I'm sorry for the trouble I've caused you. Please, can we meet? I stared at the words for a long time. I didn't know whether to feel fear, anger, or the quiet curiosity of a woman who has lost everything and has nothing left to lose. I said yes. She chose the city library, neutral ground, too public for tricks. She was there before me, early 30s, plain white shirt, jeans, hair tied back. No makeup, no armor. And yet, there was something familiar about her, the angle of her jaw, the calm way she folded her hands. Arthur's way. Mrs. Vance, she said softly, I'm Claire. Thank you for coming. I sat across from her, every instinct screaming to leave, and yet I couldn't move. Who are you really? I asked. She took out an envelope and slid it across the table. Inside was a DNA report. My father was Arthur Vance, she said, voice trembling. And my mother was Veronica Thorne. For a moment, the world tilted. Arthur and Veronica had been divorced 2 years before 1988, the year on the report. That meant he had gone back. To her. After me. I felt something collapse quietly inside my chest. It can't be true, I whispered. It is, she said. He told me himself when I was a teenager. He said he made terrible mistakes and that he'd hurt a good woman named Eleanor. He used to say your name in his sleep. She was crying now, and I didn't know whether to comfort her or myself. Her tears were clean, not the kind you shed to win, but the kind that simply happen when truth becomes too heavy. Why are you telling me this now? I asked. Because my mother is using me, she said. She forged your name on my documents, made me believe you were the woman who abandoned me. When she saw your husband's trust fund, she saw a way to get out of her debts. She dragged Daniel into it. Daniel, I repeated. Of course. She told him you and Dad had another daughter, that I was the rightful heir. She made him believe you'd stolen everything from him. Claire looked down. He thought she was protecting him. He didn't realize she was just using him. I stared at her, at this woman who carried my husband's eyes and my enemy's last name. I wanted to hate her. But hatred requires certainty, and I had none left. What do you want from me, Claire? I asked quietly. I want to make it right, she said. I've gathered proof. Emails, contracts, and something else. There's an old loan my father approved in 1986 for $5 million. The borrower was a shell company, but the money went to my mother. She partnered with a man named Evans, the same Evans who now runs the City Banking Commission. My blood ran cold. Evans. Arthur had mentioned him once, years ago, calling him the friend who almost ruined me. Now I knew why. What happened to the money? It vanished, she said. The bank wrote it off as a bad debt. But the documents show your husband tried to repay most of it himself. That's why he worked so late those years. He wasn't lying about the overtime. He was paying for her sins. I covered my mouth, the pieces finally snapping together, the secret accounts, the sleepless nights, the way Arthur always looked relieved when I believed his excuses. So he did love me, I whispered. He did, she said. Right until the end. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear hit the paper between us. Your mother said he left her for me, I said. But the truth is, she never let him go. Claire nodded. She never lets anyone go. She's still talking to Daniel. She told him you're planning to disinherit him and that I'll replace him. She's turning us against each other, I said. Even after 30 years. Claire reached into her bag and handed me a flash drive. Everything's here, she said. Proof of the loan fraud, the forged certificates, the conversations between her and Evans. If you expose them, you'll clear my father's name, and yours. Why give it to me? Because you're the only one who'll do it for him, not for money. She stood up. I don't expect forgiveness, Mrs. Vance. I just hope you'll let the truth live somewhere. When she left, I stayed seated for a long time, staring at the empty chair she'd occupied. For the first time, I understood that love and betrayal can grow from the same root. Arthur had been both faithful and flawed. He had sinned, but he had tried to atone. That night, I opened the files on the flash drive. Every page was a confession written in numbers. Arthur's signature beside Veronica's, Evans's authorization code, $5 million transferred to nowhere. And then a final note in Arthur's handwriting, dated 2 weeks before his death. If this ever reaches Eleanor, tell her I'm sorry, and thank you for teaching me what love should have been. I covered my face with both hands and let the years I'd been holding back finally break through. He had loved me. And Daniel had taken that love and sold it to the highest bidder. The next morning, I called Brenda. Find out everything you can about Evans, I said. And get ready. We're going public. Public? She echoed. You mean? Yes. Press, lawyers, everyone. If Veronica wants a war of truth, we'll fight in daylight. Brenda didn't try to stop me. She only said, then you'd better wear something that says you're done being quiet. 3 days later, I stood behind a podium at the downtown media center, my hands steady on the wood. Reporters filled the room. Cameras blinked like curious eyes. Brenda was at my side. Claire stood in the back, pale but resolute. I told them everything. About the trust. About the stolen funds. About the forged daughter and the fabricated lies. And finally, about Arthur, the man who had tried to make amends in silence. When I finished, the room was silent. Then the questions began. One of them asked, Mrs. Vance, aren't you afraid this will destroy your husband's reputation? I smiled. Tired but free. His reputation was already stolen by those who used his kindness. I'm here to return it to him. That night, as the headlines spread, Evans was taken into questioning. Veronica disappeared. Daniel stopped calling. I went home to my quiet condo. The basil plant had grown tall, reaching toward the light. I brewed myself a cup of tea and sat by the window. Outside, the city was humming, but inside, everything was still. For the first time, I didn't feel old. I felt alive. I looked at Arthur's photograph and whispered, we're even now. Rest easy. And then I opened the balcony door, letting the night breeze carry out every lie that had once lived under my roof. Sometimes, justice doesn't roar. Sometimes, it just exhales. The week after the press conference, the city moved on, but I hadn't. The news cycle turned fast, one day you're the headline, the next, a footnote between politics and weather. Evans was arrested. Veronica was found hiding in another state and charged with fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. And Daniel vanished. The last thing I heard from him was a text that said only 4 words. "You destroyed our family." I didn't answer. Because it wasn't true. The family had been broken long before I spoke a single word. I spent the days after in silence. I taught my first calligraphy class at the community college. 10 students, mostly retired teachers and old souls with shaky hands but eager hearts. When I wrote the word grace on the board, one of them whispered, "It looks like forgiveness." I smiled. Maybe it was. But forgiveness is not something you write. It's something that arrives slowly, like morning light through heavy curtains, uninvited. But necessary. One rainy afternoon, as I was preparing class notes, there was a knock on my door. A slow, hesitant knock. The kind people use when they're not sure if they should be there. I opened the door and froze. Daniel was standing there, drenched in rain, his hair unkempt, his eyes hollow. He looked 10 years older than the last time I saw him. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "Please, can I come in?" I didn't move for a long moment. Then I stepped aside. He walked in carefully, like a man entering a church. His shoes left wet prints on the floor. The silence between us was heavier than any words we'd ever thrown at each other. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I was wrong. About everything." I waited. "I believed her," he said. "I believed Veronica when she said Dad was a thief, that you were a liar, that the world owed me something. She made me feel like the victim I wanted to be." He sank into the chair by the window. The same one Arthur used to sit in. "I lost everything," he said. "Jessica left. The house, it's gone. They seized it for the repayment. I have nothing left." "You have your breath," I said quietly. "That's more than some people get after what they've done." He looked up at me, eyes red. "Do you hate me?" I thought of that question long before he ever asked it. And I realized that hate requires energy. I was too tired for hate. "No," I said. "But I can't trust you either." "Not yet." He nodded slowly. "I understand." He looked around the apartment, the books, the small kitchen, the basil plant by the window still growing strong. "This place suits you," he said softly. "Peaceful." "I built it that way," I replied. He was quiet again, then pulled something from his jacket pocket, a folded photograph. It was the same family picture that once hung on his wall. The edges were worn, the colors faded, but the smiles were still there. "I kept this," he said. "Even when I hated you." I looked at the photo for a long time. My eyes lingered on his younger face, the boy who used to run into my arms after school, proud of a good grade or a drawing of a crooked house. That boy wasn't gone, he was buried under years of pride and pain. "Daniel," I said, "your father once told me that people change. But love doesn't die, it just learns to live elsewhere." He lowered his head. "I wish I'd learned that sooner." We sat together for a while, saying nothing, just listening to the rain tapping softly against the glass. When he stood to leave, he turned to me and said, "Mom, thank you for opening the door." After he left, I stood by the window, watching his figure disappear into the gray street below. There was no music. No relief, just a quiet, aching peace. That night, I found myself walking to Hillrest Cemetery, the place where Arthur was buried, the one I'd avoided for 5 long years. The sky was overcast, the air smelled of wet pine and old regrets. His gravestone was simple, Arthur Vance, beloved father and husband. I knelt beside it and placed a bouquet of white chrysanthemums. "I think you'd be proud of me," I said softly. "Or maybe you'd tell me I took too long to stand up for myself." I told him everything, about the trust, about Daniel, about Claire, and about the storm we had all survived. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was talking to a ghost. I felt like I was reporting to someone who'd been waiting patiently for me to finish my part of the story. When I rose to leave, I whispered, "I forgive you, Arthur. Not because you deserve it, but because I do." The wind moved through the trees, and I swear I heard him laugh the way he used to, low and quiet, as if to say, "Finally." A week later, Claire came to visit before moving to another city. She had her father's old smile and a small suitcase. "I got a job," she said. "New place. New start." "I'm glad," I told her. She hesitated, then asked, "Do you forgive me, too?" I smiled. "You never wronged me, Claire. You just carried the wrong truth for too long." She hugged me tightly. It felt like closing a chapter. After she left, I looked around the apartment, the clean dishes, the soft hum of the fridge, the late afternoon sun spilling through the balcony door. Everything was still, but it wasn't empty. It was full of peace that had finally earned its right to stay. That evening, Brenda called. "I've got news," she said. "The community college wants you to take on another class, literature appreciation. They loved your calligraphy lessons." "Me? Teaching again?" "Who else?" she laughed. "You're the only one who can make people cry over a brushstroke." I agreed. On Monday morning, I walked into the college building with a notebook in hand and a heart that no longer trembled. The students, men and women my age, greeted me warmly. When I wrote the word renewal on the board, a woman in the front row whispered, "That's what this feels like." I smiled. "Yes," I said. "Exactly that." After class, I was about to leave when a man approached me. Gray hair, kind eyes, holding a folder under his arm. "Mrs. Vance," he said. "I'm Robert Miller, History Department. I attended your lecture last week. I was wondering if you'd join our faculty luncheon on Friday." No pressure. He smiled shyly, and for the first time in years, I felt a flicker of something I thought I had buried with Arthur, not romance exactly, but warmth, curiosity, the sense that life still had corners I hadn't turned. Friday came and I went. We talked about books, teaching, gardens, and laughter. He asked if I liked music. I said I used to. He said he'd like to change used to into do. When I returned home that night, I made tea, opened the balcony door, and looked out over the city lights. They didn't feel distant anymore. They felt alive, like 1,000 tiny heartbeats pulsing in rhythm with my own. In the quiet, I whispered to no one in particular, 62, and life's just beginning. Peace didn't roar through the door that day. It simply walked in, hung up its coat, and stayed. A year has passed since that morning when I walked out of my son's house with a suitcase and a trembling heart. A year since I stopped being someone's mother, someone's maid, someone's afterthought. And started being myself again. It's strange how time softens the sharp edges of pain. The days no longer feel heavy. The air in my lungs feels light. Peace has learned my name. Every morning, I wake up at 6. I make coffee, water the basil plant that's now too big for its pot, and open the balcony door to let the wind in. I still talk to Arthur sometimes, quietly, over my cup. I tell him about my classes, about Brenda's new grandchild, about how I've stopped checking my phone for calls that never come. And lately, I tell him about Robert. Robert Miller, the history professor who sits 2 seats away from me during faculty lunches. He makes terrible coffee but tells the kind of stories that make you forget you're supposed to sip it. We've been to the museum, the farmer's market, even the symphony once. He never rushes me. He never asks for more than conversation. And that, after everything I've survived, feels like grace. One quiet afternoon in spring, as I was preparing notes for my next class, there was another knock on the door. This one wasn't hesitant, it was steady, rhythmic, familiar. I opened it. And there he was, Daniel. A little thinner, a little older, but so bright and calm. "Hi, Mom," he said. His voice had lost the edge it used to carry. "I didn't want to call. I wanted to see you." I stepped aside, and he came in. He looked around the apartment, noticing the new books, the framed poems, the small changes time had made. "This place suits you," he said softly. "I know," I replied. "It's mine." He handed me a small envelope. "I've been repaying the trust, little by little. I still owe you most of it, but I wanted you to know. I'm trying." I took it, not for the money, but for the effort it represented. We sat at the table where everything once broke between us. He looked out at the balcony and smiled faintly. "That basil plant is huge now." "It's stubborn," I said. "It refuses to stop growing." "Like you," he murmured. I wanted to tell him that forgiveness isn't a single word you say, it's a garden you keep watering even when nothing seems to grow. But instead, I just said, "You can visit sometimes. If you bring your own tea." He laughed softly. "Deal." When he left, I stood at the window, watching him walk away. He didn't look back, and for once, that didn't hurt. Because love doesn't need to live under the same roof to exist. It just needs to stop being afraid. That evening, Robert came by with a small cake and 2 forks. "No occasion," he said. "You just look like someone who should have dessert on a Thursday." We ate it by the window, the city stretching out below like a map of all the places I had been and all the ones I had yet to go. When he asked how my day was, I said, "Quiet." He smiled. "Sometimes that's the best kind." After he left, I sat with my journal open on my lap. Inside, between the pages, was a poem Arthur once loved, "The Road Not Taken" by Robert Frost. He used to say the words fit me better than they fit him. 2 roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by. And that has made all the difference. For the first time I understood what he meant. The road I took wasn't easy. It was lonely, rough, full of broken glass and ghosts. But it was mine. And walking it made me whole. I closed the journal and turned off the lamp. Outside, the moon was low, the streets quiet, the world tender in its silence. I am 63 now. I have taught 3 new classes, planted 2 more basil pots, and learned that peace doesn't mean nothing ever hurts again, it means knowing you can survive when it does. Some nights, I still dream of Arthur standing at the edge of a long road, smiling, nodding for me to keep going. I wake with tears, but they no longer sting. They just remind me I'm still here, still living, still choosing. Because sometimes life doesn't end when the curtain falls. Sometimes it begins when you finally walk off the stage. You know, people think starting over means burning everything behind you. But sometimes it just means finally walking home to yourself. Eleanor spent 60 years giving, to her husband, her students, her son. And no one ever taught her that giving yourself away isn't the same as love. It took betrayal to show her what real freedom looked like. And it looked like peace. It looked like coffee made for one. It looked like waking up in a room that was hers. Life doesn't always hand you happy endings. Sometimes, it just gives you quiet ones. The kind that whisper instead of sing. The kind that grow slowly like basil on a sunny windowsill. And if you're lucky, one day you'll realize that peace was never something you had to find. It was something waiting for you all along. The moment you chose yourself. So, if you're listening to this tonight, and you've ever felt invisible, forgotten, or small, remember this. You are allowed to begin again. At 62. At 70. At any age your heart finally decides it's time. Because peace isn't youth. It's the courage to live like you still matter. And you do.